The night my father betrayed me over steak and silverware. The dining room was drenched in warm light from the chandelier above, but the words coming out of my father's mouth could have frozen a summer evening in Texas. "What do you mean Olivia will own the company?" I asked the question slowly, deliberately, even though I already sensed the answer. My hands clenched under the tablecloth. Across from me, my sister Olivia raised her wine glass with a smirk that said everything. She hadn't spent a single late night in the office. She hadn't sacrificed weekends, birthdays, or sleep. But now she was being handed the crown of Whitman Global Systems, the company I had practically resurrected from its grave. My father, Thomas Whitman, didn't even look up from his steak. "Rachel, let's be realistic," he sighed, his tone patronizing, as though he were explaining basic math to a child. "You're great with technical things, but leadership, that's not your strength. Olivia has presence. She commands a room." Presence? I had poured over 70-hour weeks into a crumbling company no one believed could be saved. I had built a logistics software system from scratch, an innovation that turned a dying regional outfit into a $300 million national player. And now, I was being told that I didn't have presence. The final blow wasn't his words. It was the gesture. With casual indifference, he pulled out his wallet, peeled off a $50 bill, and tossed it onto the table. "For your effort?" The crisp note landed between my plate and my untouched glass of Cabernet the same way one might tip a valet. $50 for 3 years of sleepless nights, broken relationships, and missed holidays. $50 for saving his legacy. My mother shifted uncomfortably beside him, but said nothing. That moment broke something in me, not just as a daughter, but as a person. I had spent my entire adult life working toward one goal, earning my father's respect. Not just his love, but his recognition. And now, as he chose nepotism over merit, I realized the hard truth. It was never about loyalty. It was always about control. I picked up the $50 bill, folded it slowly into my napkin, and stood. I didn't shout. I didn't throw my wine. I didn't make a scene. I simply said, "If my role in this family is just a background character, I'll excuse myself from the scene." Olivia laughed under her breath as I walked out. My mother called after me. My father didn't even look up. But what none of them realized was this. That quiet exit wasn't a surrender. It was a beginning. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call a friend or open a bottle of wine to numb the sting. I sat at my desk and stared at the code I'd written. The very software that had changed everything for Whitman Global Systems. And I realized something powerful. They might own the company's name, but the vision, the innovation, the future, that still belonged to me. In that moment, I made a vow, not of revenge, but of independence. I would stop waiting for someone else to see my worth. I would stop asking for a seat at their table and start building my own, because some people are born into legacy. Others have to build theirs, and mine was just getting started. From CTO to the basement. The day my name disappeared. The Monday after that dinner, I showed up at work early, like I always did. Even after the betrayal over filet mignon and a $50 insult, I was still loyal enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, something could be salvaged. Maybe my father would reconsider, maybe this was just a heat-of-the-moment decision. I should have known better. As I walked through the glass doors of Whitman Global Systems, the company I had practically rebuilt with my bare hands, I felt something shift. The receptionist avoided eye contact. A few junior associates who usually greeted me with a warm, "Good morning, Rachel," suddenly found their shoes incredibly fascinating. My stomach sank. Then I reached my office. Or, what used to be my office. The door was open, my desk gone, my computer wiped clean. Even the brass nameplate that once read Rachel Whitman, CTO, had vanished without a trace. In my place, sitting in the chair I'd spent years earning, was Olivia, legs crossed, latte in hand, flipping through reports like she owned the air in the room. She looked up with a smile so rehearsed it belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "Oh, good morning, Rachel. Didn't Dad tell you? I'm moving into this office. You'll be reporting to me now." My breath caught, but I held my expression. "What's my position?" I asked, my voice level, betraying none of the storm I felt inside. Olivia tilted her head, her tone airy and dismissive. "We haven't quite decided, maybe something in IT support or data entry." She laughed softly, like it was a joke. "Anyway, take some time off. You've been working too hard. Maybe pursue a hobby?" I stood there in silence, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound between us. They weren't just demoting me. They were erasing me. All the late nights I spent running code at 2 a.m., all the weekends I sacrificed, all the contracts I secured with my software, the very system that saved this company from bankruptcy. None of it mattered now. My reward was a folding desk in a corner cubicle beside the interns. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream or cry or demand justice. I nodded. "Understood," I said, and walked away. Because while they thought they had written me out of the script, what they didn't realize was that I had already started writing a new one where I was the protagonist, one where I was no longer waiting for their permission to lead. That afternoon, I sat at my new desk, a rickety table next to the copy machine, and watched the empire I had helped build begin to rot from the inside. Olivia was already making reckless decisions, replacing department heads with college sorority friends, spending more time planning launch parties than studying data. And my father? He had vanished into board meetings, pretending this new structure was progress. But I saw it. Whitman Global Systems was a gleaming yacht captained by amateurs, heading straight for the rocks. And I was quietly building a lifeboat, because while they stripped me of my office, my title, and my recognition, what they couldn't strip was my knowledge, my experience, and the code I never uploaded to their servers. They thought they buried me. They didn't realize I was planting something bigger, stronger, and soon unstoppable. Planting the seeds of a new empire. For the next month, I became a ghost inside my own company. They'd buried me in the farthest corner of the building, seated next to fresh-faced interns who still believed that working hard would earn them recognition. I didn't correct them. I let them live in that illusion a little longer. Meanwhile, I watched the empire crumble. From my makeshift workstation near the supply closet, I saw the chaos quietly build. Olivia was drowning. The meetings she once giggled through turned tense. Her emails became frantic. She started firing experienced department heads and replacing them with her wine night friends, people with flashy LinkedIn bios and zero understanding of logistics. She spoke in buzzwords and gut feelings, not data or structure. The systems I built were misused, neglected, and eventually broken. But I said nothing, because I was busy building something better. Late nights, after everyone else had gone home, I would stay. Not at the Whitman office, no. I'd head to a local cafe, the kind that stayed open until midnight and brewed coffee strong enough to power a jet engine. I'd sit in the corner booth with my laptop, eyes locked on the screen, rewriting the future line by line. You see, what no one at Whitman Global Systems realized was that while they may have owned the company, they didn't own the soul of what made it succeed. They didn't own me. More importantly, they didn't own the code. The original software that pulled Whitman out of the ashes? I wrote the first version of it long before I ever uploaded it to their servers. And the most advanced version, the one with predictive analytics, real-time logistics mapping, and a patented error correction algorithm. I never turned it over. It lived on my personal drive, updated, sharpened, untouched by corporate politics. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to rise, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. So one Friday evening, under the warm glow of that cafe's pendant lights, I sat across from three of the smartest people I'd ever worked with, people who had quietly resigned from Whitman in the past month, too smart to stick around and too loyal to forget what we built together. Jake, our former CFO, who once kept the company afloat with nothing but spreadsheets and sleepless nights. Maya, the data whisperer, our best analyst and the only one who could turn chaos into clarity. And David, the engineer who knew my code almost as well as I did, because we'd written most of it together at 3 a.m. during the company's darkest days. They didn't need a pitch. I simply slid a folder across the table. Inside, the blueprint of a new venture, a platform better than anything Whitman Global Systems had ever touched. Smarter, faster, scalable. It was lean, intuitive, and built for the global market. Jake looked at the numbers. Maya scanned the predictive models. David's eyes lit up at the modular code stack. They were in. And just like that, the first sparks of Solara Dynamics were born. We didn't make noise. We didn't post cryptic messages on social media or announce our departure with fanfare. We worked in silence, the kind of silence that follows a storm and precedes an earthquake. I knew timing was everything. Whitman Global Systems was circling the drain, and once the collapse began, I'd be ready. Not to rescue them, but to replace them. The cracks became a landslide. It didn't take long for the cracks to become a landslide. 6 weeks after I first slid that folder across the cafe table, Solara Dynamics had gone from blueprint to beta. We were lean, agile, and fueled by something far more potent than capital: purpose. We didn't have marble floors or company retreats in Aspen. What we had were late nights, unmatched talent, and a product that made competitors sit up straight. Meanwhile, back at Whitman Global Systems, Olivia was burning down the house with a blowtorch. The first client dropped on a Monday. A major retailer, one who'd been with Whitman for nearly 12 years. They sent a vague email about changing strategic direction and optimizing future partnerships. I didn't have to guess where they were going. They'd already signed a letter of intent with us the Friday before. By Wednesday, 2 more clients followed. One of them had tried to schedule a meeting with Olivia and was told she was unavailable for the next 3 weeks due to travel. The truth, she was wine tasting in Sonoma. I saw the Instagram photos. Inside the office, panic had begun to settle into the walls. Department heads were resigning, junior staff were whispering in corners, and even the janitorial crew seemed to sense the air was shifting. People were waiting for leadership to lead. But no one came. My father, Thomas Whitman, still held the title of CEO, but he was a ghost. Too proud to admit he was wrong, too stubborn to intervene. Olivia was the face of the company now, and she wore that role like an expensive coat, 2 sizes too big. Shiny, loud, and completely ill-fitting. By the end of the month, Whitman Global Systems lost 5 of its top 10 clients. Their logistics pipeline had begun to back up like a clogged artery, and the outdated version of my software couldn't keep up with demand. Delays, miscalculations, shipment errors. Their competitors were circling like vultures, including us. Solara Dynamics didn't advertise our success. We let the results speak. Seamless implementation. Real-time updates. Predictive analytics that shaved 12% off operating costs in the first quarter alone. Our clients weren't just happy, they were evangelical. And they were bringing their friends. That's when I got the call. It was from a well-known industry magazine. The editor, a sharp woman named Gina, wanted to do a piece on Solara Dynamics, the startup that's shaking the old guard. I declined a formal interview, but gave her a single quote. "Sometimes you have to let an empire fall to build something better." The article went viral, and for the first time, the board at Whitman Global Systems had to look reality in the face. Still, they didn't call me. Not yet. But I knew it was coming. I'd seen the quarterly report. Leaked naturally. Revenues were down 38%. Operating costs were up, and investor confidence had tanked. Their credit line had been frozen. Payroll delays were rumored, and then came the announcement that would shift everything. Whitman Global Systems was exploring strategic restructuring. That's corporate speak for, "We're about to drown and we have no lifeboats." Jake sent me the article with a single text. "Told you the flood was coming." I smiled but said nothing, because I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to outlast. I'd waited patiently while they underestimated me, humiliated me, and pushed me out. But now they were reaping the consequences of their arrogance, and I was just getting started. The deal that changed the game. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the call came in, the kind of call that makes you stand up from your chair before you even answer. I was reviewing a prototype update with David, our lead engineer, when my assistant knocked gently on the glass wall of my office. "Rachel," she said, her voice calm but her eyes wide. "They're on the line." I didn't have to ask who they were. For months, we had been quietly courting one of the largest retail logistics firms in the country, Trimark Supply Chain Solutions, a $2.2 billion behemoth with distribution hubs across 14 states. They'd been watching the chaos unravel at Whitman Global Systems and, more importantly, watching what we were doing differently. Their CIO had been on a demo call with us 2 weeks prior. I remembered the way his voice shifted when he saw our predictive routing feature in real time. That aha silence. It's a sound you never forget when you're on the brink of closing something massive. I stepped into the conference room, heart pounding, and answered the call. The voice on the other end didn't waste time. "Rachel, this is Mark Hastings. We're ready to move forward with full implementation." I blinked just once. "That's great to hear, Mark. What scope are you envisioning?" He chuckled. "All of it. We want Solara Dynamics running every tier of our logistics network starting Q2. We'll begin with the coastal warehouses and scale up from there." I gripped the edge of the conference table, grounding myself. "Do you have a number in mind?" $50 million, he said. "And if rollout goes as smoothly as we've seen in your pilot accounts, there's more where that came from." $50 million. I held my composure. Barely. "I'll have the legal team send the contract for review by end of day." "Looking forward to it," he said. "You've built something special, Rachel. This isn't just a software deal. This is the future of logistics." When the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. David looked at me, eyes wide. "Was that?" "It was," I said. Then, breaking into a grin, "We did it." By 5 p.m., the contract was signed. By 6:30, champagne was flowing in our break room, cheap flutes, plastic cups, and the kind of joy you don't manufacture with catered parties or corny speeches. It was real, earned, ours. But this wasn't just about money. It was validation. Proof that the empire I had started building on the ashes of betrayal was now towering over the very company that tried to erase me. Across town, Whitman Global Systems was crumbling. The news of the Trimark deal broke the following morning in an industry newsletter. The headline was brutal. Solara Dynamics secures $50 million deal. Whitman's former clients turn to rising star. The article made no attempt to soften the blow. It highlighted our meteoric rise, our superior product, and, yes, my name, over and over again. Rachel Whitman, founder and CEO, the woman they cast aside. That same morning, I received an email from an unfamiliar address, thomas.whitman@whitmanent.com. The subject line was simple. "We need to talk." I didn't open it. I didn't need to, because I already knew what it would say. Please, regret. Maybe some warped attempt at reconciliation, but it was too late. The door they had slammed shut on me a year ago had become a wall, one they couldn't climb. And I was standing on top of it. With this deal, Solara Dynamics wasn't just a competitor anymore. We were the future, and I wasn't finished yet. From industry underdog to the face of innovation. 2 weeks after the Trimark deal closed, I received an invitation that nearly made me drop my coffee. It came in a matte black envelope with gold foil lettering, Tech Innovators Gala, honoring industry disruptors who are changing the game. It was the kind of event where legacy CEOs rubbed elbows with Forbes cover stars, where attendance alone was a signal you had arrived. But I wasn't just invited to attend. I was being honored. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Solara Dynamics was barely a year old, and yet we'd grown fast. Fast enough to make headlines, fast enough to unsettle the old guard, and, apparently, fast enough to stand on a stage in front of every major executive in the tech and logistics sector. I RSVP'd with a single word, gladly. The night of the gala arrived crisp and cool, one of those rare Dallas evenings in early spring where the humidity eases and the stars actually show up. I stepped out of the car in a deep navy satin gown, custom-tailored, minimal jewelry, and just enough edge in my smile to remind everyone I hadn't forgotten where I came from. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, string quartets, and the quiet murmur of powerful people pretending they weren't impressed by one another. But when the host took the stage and began listing Solara's impact, from our 47% market share to our AI-integrated logistics platform, it was clear whose name they were waiting to hear. Please welcome Rachel Whitman, founder and CEO of Solara Dynamics. The applause hit me like a wave, not polite, not obligatory, real. I walked to the podium, heels clicking softly across the polished floor, and looked out into a sea of faces, some curious, some admiring, and a few, very few, unmistakably uncomfortable. In the back corner of the room near the exit, I spotted them. My father, Thomas Whitman, and my sister, Olivia. They weren't guests, not really, not anymore. Whitman Global Systems had been stripped of its relevance, and their presence tonight was less about honor and more about hanging on to whatever scraps of recognition they could still claim. They looked smaller somehow, shadows of the dynasty they once believed untouchable. I turned back to the mic. When I started this journey, I began, my voice clear, steady. I wasn't trying to disrupt an industry. I was trying to earn a seat at a table that had always treated me like a guest. The room fell silent. But sometimes, I continued, when the table won't make space for you, you build your own. A pause, then thunderous applause. I left the stage to a standing ovation, not because I'd taken down a legacy, but because I had created one, and people could feel that. The next morning, the press had a field day. Headlines splashed across every major outlet, from Castaway to Queenmaker, Rachel Whitman reigns at Tech Gala. Whitman Global Systems crumbles as former CTO leads Solara Dynamics to $500 million valuation. What they didn't know, but I did, was just how poetic the timing truly was. 3 days after the gala, Whitman Global Systems quietly filed for bankruptcy. It didn't even make the front page of the Wall Street Journal, just a footnote in the business section. A dying gasp from a legacy firm that had run out of lifelines. The irony? Most of the technology that once kept them afloat now powered their competitors, thanks to me. I didn't gloat. I didn't send champagne. I didn't even call. I simply printed the headline, framed it, and hung it in the hallway outside our Solara Dynamics boardroom. A reminder not of revenge, but of resolve, because the true victory wasn't in their collapse, it was in my rise, and I wasn't done yet. They walked into my office, but this time I held the power. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when my assistant Claire buzzed in with a tone I hadn't heard from her before. "Rachel, your father and sister are here." I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, one hand resting on the edge of my desk, the other still holding my coffee mug. Not out of surprise, but out of the sheer irony. I took a slow sip before replying, "Send them in." The door opened and in walked Thomas and Olivia Whitman, the very people who once tossed me aside like I was an intern who overstayed her welcome. My father looked older, paler, like the weight of the crumbling empire he had built had finally settled on his shoulders. Olivia's designer outfit was pristine, but no outfit could mask desperation. Her smile, the one she used to wear like a weapon, was gone. They didn't sit until I gestured to the chairs across from me. "Rachel," my father began, voice tight with restraint, "we're here because Whitman Global Systems is in trouble. We need your help." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of the past. Just a carefully worded plea, dressed up in corporate desperation. I kept my tone neutral. Define trouble. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "We've lost 5 major contracts. Our valuation dropped 72% in the last 6 months. We're hemorrhaging talent. Our head of operations left last week, and 2 board members resigned yesterday." My gaze didn't flinch. "And you're coming to me because—" "We want you back," my father said. "We're offering you a senior leadership role, maybe even co-CEO." I blinked once, then twice, not out of shock, but because I couldn't believe how far they'd fallen without realizing it. "You're offering me co-CEO," I repeated, after calling me a technician who wasn't leadership material. My father looked away. Olivia cut in. "Rachel, this isn't the time to drag up the past. We need to move forward." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to make them listen. "No, Olivia, you don't get to skip the past just because the future finally scares you." They sat in silence. I continued, calm and controlled. "You made it clear I didn't belong. You handed my office to someone who couldn't even read a quarterly report without help. And when your company started to bleed, you came to the person you treated like she didn't matter." My father's voice cracked slightly. "You're still family." I shook my head. "Family doesn't hand out $50 as a thank you for saving a $300 million business." Silence fell like a curtain. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" I said, standing slowly. "You needed legacy to feel powerful. I built mine from the ground up, with no shortcuts, no favors, no last names to lean on." Olivia's voice trembled. "So what? You're going to let us fail?" I walked to the window, gazing out over the city skyline I now helped shape. "You already have," I said softly. Then I turned to face them. "But just so we're clear, this isn't revenge. This is clarity. I don't owe you anything, and I won't let your sinking ship drag me down." My father stood speechless. Olivia's eyes were glassy. They walked out without another word, and as the door clicked shut behind them, I sat back down at my desk, heart steady, breath slow. Because in that moment, I knew something deeper than power or vindication. I had finally reclaimed my voice, and this time, no one could silence it. The signature that ended their legacy and cemented mine. 3 days later, I received an official notice. Whitman Global Systems had entered bankruptcy protection. It was surreal, like reading the obituary of a relative who had long been fading, but whose death still landed like a thud in your chest. Except this time, I didn't grieve. I felt clarity, closure. I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy them. They did it themselves. And yet, as fate would have it, one final opportunity crossed my desk. A discreet offer from the bankruptcy trustee. The company's assets, including the Whitman Global Systems name, were being liquidated. Everything, buildings, trademarks, software rights, even the family crest, was up for sale. For a moment, I stared at the file in silence. Then I picked up my pen. A week later, I sat at the very boardroom table where my father once told me I didn't have leadership presence. But this time, I was alone. No one stood at the head but me. The paperwork was crisp, the ink was still fresh, and with one signature, I acquired everything Whitman Global Systems once was, only to dissolve it. Yes, dissolve it. I didn't want their brand. I didn't need their history. What I wanted was to retire their name forever, so no daughter would ever be told again that her hard work wasn't enough, that her brilliance was a threat. When the press release went out, the headline was simple. Solara Dynamics acquires and retires Whitman Global Systems. A new era begins. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need to gloat. The silence was loud enough. In the months that followed, Solara Dynamics soared. We secured federal contracts, launched a new AI-powered logistics suite, and expanded to offices in Chicago and San Diego. Our workforce grew by 40%, and our employee satisfaction hit an all-time high. The culture I created, one of merit, not bloodline, was finally thriving. But the real victory? It came in quieter moments. Like the Friday afternoon, I walked through the main floor and overheard two interns, young women barely out of college, talking by the break room. She built all of this, one whispered, not knowing I was behind her. She didn't inherit it. She earned every inch. That meant more than any quarterly earnings report, because in the end, reclaiming my legacy wasn't about revenge, it was about liberation. I no longer needed my father's approval or my sister's validation. I had become the woman I was always meant to be, not in the shadow of a crumbling empire, but in the light of one I had built myself. As I looked out over the skyline from my office, the sun dipping low over the city, I thought back to that crumpled $50 bill tossed across a dinner table like spare change. And I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd risen. And in doing so, I'd changed the game for every woman who dared to believe she could too. In life, the hardest lessons often come from those we love most. Rachel Whitman's story is a powerful reminder that recognition doesn't always come from those who should see our value. It comes from those who do. Betrayed by her father, dismissed by her sister, and stripped of the legacy she helped build, Rachel didn't seek revenge. She sought independence. This story isn't just about corporate betrayal. It's about reclaiming dignity. For any man or woman in their 40s or 50s who's ever been overlooked despite years of sacrifice, Rachel's journey says, you're not invisible. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's title or approval. It's defined by your resilience, your vision, and your willingness to start again, even when the world hands you $50 for your brilliance. Her rise from a basement cubicle to the founder of a billion-dollar enterprise wasn't luck. It was grit. And most of all, it was clarity. She didn't burn the bridge out of spite. She built her own to something greater. The real message? Legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you build. And sometimes the best way to win is to walk away and build something they can't take from you